Hi everyone, this is Sandy with Sewing with Sandy and LTD Quilting. We are working on Jen Kingwell and Andrea Bear's Boho Heart. And we're doing this as a sew along on my Sewing with Sandy Facebook page. If you're not a member of that group, please find it and request a join on Facebook. Also, while I'm giving a little plug, if you haven't subscribed to my LTD Quilting YouTube channel, please hit subscribe and give me a thumbs up, and be sure to click on so that you get the notifications when I do post a video. Now, this week of March, we are going to be working on this block, which is called the intersection block, and the pattern for this block is found on page 5 of the Boho Heart pattern booklet. You can see that I did take a little bit of liberty and fussy cut my favorite thing, flamingos, for the corners of this block because it is one of the bigger blocks. In addition to this intersection block for this week, also you will need to be finishing, if you haven't already done so, your little square in a squares, and you should have 15 total of these. They can be scrappy. They could be all the same, although the way that they're put in the quilt, it might be nice if they were mixed up a little bit. And then in addition to that, you can be working on and thinking about these little fillers that go in the quilt, these different intervals. Now, in the back of the book, when it starts talking about assembly, it shows the assembly in what is called groups. So there's group 1, group 2, group 3, etc. Group 1 is going to be this part of the quilt here. And you can see here in this group 1, we've got 3 of those little sections that you have the option of letting your background show through. So there's one, there's a second one, and there's a third one that are in this first group. And if you're going to let your background show through, then you really don't need to be worrying about those. If you're wanting to either fussy cut something or piece something to go in those spots so that they are filled in the heart, which is what I plan to do, then you may want to think about looking at that assembly guide and figuring out how big those need to be cut. Be sure to add seam allowances because in the book, in the assembly guide, it gives the finished size. So just be sure to add your seam allowances to those pieces. Now, you can see here that 2 of those are going to go on your little owl applique. And we will talk about doing the owl applique as a fusible applique. If you want to turn the edges, you're kind of on your own for this time on that. But we will talk about, in a week or two, talk about making this cute little owl as an applique the way it is in the pattern. However, I did mention earlier, and I'm just going to show you, I fussy cut an owl out of Tula Pink's Moon Garden fabric line because I think that owl is just fabulous, and I'm using Tula Pink fabrics for my quilt. So I decided to just, save myself having to make the applique owl and fussy cut this guy out, and it was a perfect size. Then I went ahead and figured out the sizes, cut my fillers. These are where background stripes would be at if I followed the pattern, but you know me, I can't follow the pattern completely. So I fussy cut this really cool print out of another of Tula's Moon Garden fabrics. And then I went ahead and I looked at my diagram for assembly, and I saw that I could put these together and have it work. So I did that. I went ahead and pieced these together, and you'll see that I fussy cut these as well. So it's sewn in here. I've got my 1/4 inch off here. You can see those fun little purple leaves coming up. When I sew in the other side, then I'm going to have the same amount of that in a different color on the other side. But you'll also notice that I centered it so that my line of flowers is coming off of the point here and coming off of the point there. Now, there's no need to get that fancy with it if you don't want to. I'm just showing you what I did. And again, we'll talk about the owl later, but if you want to do what I did, just showing you what happened. And then this is the other piece that I fussy cut that will fit on top of this sawtooth star, which we'll be doing here in another week or two. And it's going to fit that block. Again, I added my seam allowances to make it the right size. And in this case, I cut a different part of that ombre print from Tula's fantastic fabric. And I think just for continuity and interest, a place for the eye to rest, yada yada, whatever you want to say, I think I'm going to use this fabric throughout my quilt in all of these spots. So all of these spots in my quilt that have, right now you see the background coming through in my quilt, all of those are going to be a fussy cut with the row of flowers centered, and that's how I'm going to do it as much as I possibly can. So I'm just throwing that out there this week. But for week 2 of March, we'll call it, what you need to have done to be quote unquote caught up, although we're not going to get, upset if you're not right where everyone else is. We need to have all 15 of these little units done. And then we need to do the intersection block from page 5. If you have any questions at all, be sure to give me a shout out. You will notice in this particular block, lots of relatively small finished squares and rectangles, and very important that your cutting and your sewing are super accurate when you're getting down to these smaller sizes. There's not a lot of room for fudging in those particular areas, as opposed to something like this big square where I could stretch it a little to fit one way or the other and it wouldn't cause a problem. So keep that in mind. Accuracy, very important. And we will get back together in a week, and be sure to post your pictures on Sewing with Sandy so that we can all see how you're coming along. And I love to see all the variety and creativity of the fabric choices that people are making. That's all for today. Have a great week.